we're cutting straight through the noise to break down Prime Minister Keir Starmer's latest high-stakes interview. We're going to translate what all that intense political maneuvering in Westminster actually means for you, right at your kitchen table. We'll critically review his claims straight from the source, mapping out exactly how this government is trying to navigate some seriously turbulent waters, both at home and across the globe. So here's our roadmap for today. We're moving from the political pressure cooker straight to his promises for working citizens. Then we'll look at how global shocks hit local wallets, what the plan is for securing our long-term future, and finally, we'll examine the man in number 10 himself. Let's get right into it. Part 1. The political pressure cooker. We've got to start with the sheer, absolute volume of pressure currently bearing down on the Prime Minister right ahead of looming local elections. You know, there is a massive divide right now. If you look at the Westminster bubble, it's all about internal party friction. You've got rebellious Labour MPs, debates over appointing Lord Mandelson as U.S. ambassador, and a looming Privileges Committee probe pushed by opponents over whether the PM misled Parliament. It's a lot of drama. But for the average working citizen, you're probably looking at a completely different set of problems. You're looking at falling living standards, frustrating NHS waiting lists, and worrying about how global conflicts are literally spiking your daily expenses. And when the interviewer pressed him on that Privileges Committee investigation, and yeah, the inevitable comparisons being drawn to former PM Boris Johnson, Starmer really pushed back. He point-blank labeled these parliamentary maneuvers as a political stunt. He argued that they've already provided massive transparency, handing over thousands of documents. Basically, he is firmly framing these Westminster debates as deliberate, noisy distractions from his actual job, which is governing and protecting the public. Which brings us to part 2, promises for working citizens. If the government really wants to tune out that Westminster noise, what are they actually claiming to do for everyday working folks? Well, the Prime Minister argues his core focus is on doing the hard yards. Sure, he makes the big macro-level claims about stabilizing the economy with falling inflation and lower interest rates, but he also points to highly specific domestic interventions aimed right at your household. We're talking free breakfast clubs and lifting the two-child benefit limit to pull hundreds of thousands of kids out of poverty. Then add in the Renters' Rights Act, which he's calling a generational upgrade for workers and tenants. It's a very clear attempt to speak directly to the immediate pressing concerns we all have. And to back that up, he offered this exact metric, £100. The government made a calculated decision to step in and keep average energy bills lower by exactly that amount until the end of June. He's using this specific number as concrete proof that amidst all the global chaos, his administration is actively managing financial risks for families. It's all about keeping money in your pocket. But of course, domestic policy doesn't happen in a vacuum. Part 3. Global shocks, local wallets. Let's talk about how overseas conflicts inevitably hit your pocketbook at the supermarket and the petrol pump. The interviewer really pressed him on the ongoing conflict in Iran and its ripple effects, and the PM actually leveled with the public here. He acknowledged that while the UK is confident in its supplies right now, they've even taken steps like reopening a CO2 plant in the Northeast to help out. Prolonged conflict around vital choke points like the Strait of Hormuz will force changes. It's a pretty stark warning. A faraway conflict could very soon dictate what you can actually afford in the supermarket aisle or what it costs to fill up your car for a weekend trip. But despite those massive threats to our daily lives, the Prime Minister is drawing a hard line on military engagement. Citing those really painful lessons learned from the Iraq War, he firmly defended his absolute refusal to join the conflict directly. He's faced massive external pressure, even dismissive comments from U.S. figures like Donald Trump about the UK's military capabilities. But he insists his only duty is the British national interest. He is categorically refusing to get dragged into a new war that he believes just doesn't serve the UK. So, okay, if direct war is off the table, what's the actual strategy to keep the Strait of Hormuz open and protect our supply chains? It's a highly coordinated, three-pronged approach. First, the political side, leading a coalition of over 40 countries to exert diplomatic pressure. Second is logistical, providing support and insurance management so commercial vessels can navigate safely. And third is a military reassurance mission. It's co-led by the French and the British, pulling in capabilities from a dozen countries, all to ensure ships can pass securely without the UK having to fire the first shot. Managing that immediate crisis in the Middle East is one thing, but how do we insulate citizens permanently? That brings us to part 4, securing the long-term future. When it comes to defense readiness, especially with the looming threats from Russia and the pressure to meet NATO obligations, the Prime Minister highlighted that the UK has already bumped up its defense spending to 2.6% of GDP. He was quick to point out that this is the largest sustained uplift since the Cold War, and there's a comprehensive future defense investment plan currently being finalized. The idea here isn't just about military might, it's about treating defense as a crucial cornerstone of our long-term economic security in a really unstable world. Now, this brings us to a massive conceptual shift. For the last 20 years, Starmer argues, governments have responded to global shocks by scrambling to get back to the status quo, just trying to get back to normal. But he's arguing with absolute gravity that the old world order is simply gone. Returning to the baseline is no longer a viable survival strategy. To survive the next generation of global volatility, he says the UK needs a total, foundational shift in how it operates on the world stage.
So what does that mean in practice? It means massive structural pivots. To regain control over your household bills and permanently secure supply chains, the strategy demands moving away from volatile global fossil fuel markets. Instead, we're driving directly toward total energy independence and forging much closer strategic ties with Europe. And similarly, in defense, it means abandoning isolated national planning. The new plan? Sharing capabilities and integrating deeply into European coalitions. It's a seriously bold strategic pivot meant to guarantee long-term economic security. Finally, Part 5, the man in number 10. Navigating all of this takes a deeply personal toll, and to be honest, the interview didn't shy away from exposing that reality. The interviewer was highly combative. They pointed straight to the incredibly high turnover in the Prime Minister's inner circle. He's dispensed with cabinet secretaries, chiefs of staff, and communications directors in a really short tenure. The PM was asked directly if he felt lonely, if his own cabinet was cooling towards him, and honestly, if in the darkest, quietest hours of the night at 3 a.m., he ever looks in the mirror and wonders if he himself is the problem holding the country back. Heavy stuff, right? But despite all that immense friction, the PM remained resolute. He insisted he has a strong team united in rising to these current global challenges. On a personal level, he shared that his true sanctuary is his family flat upstairs in number 10. He relies heavily on the honest advice of his wife Vic and the grounding joy of his 2 kids. But ultimately, he knows his mandate is on the clock. He firmly stated he intends to deliver on his promises and is fully prepared to be judged by voters at the very next election. Which leaves us with this final, crucial question to consider. We've traced the roadmap today, from the noise of rebellious Labour MPs and parliamentary probes to the quiet promises of £100 energy relief and European defense coalitions. But as global crises in the Middle East and Ukraine just continue to rage and internal debates threaten to distract, will Keir Starmer's kitchen table policies truly be enough to secure the long-term confidence of the average working citizen? What do you think? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I highly encourage you to keep a very close eye on how these exact promises unfold over the coming months.